Hey everybody, welcome to the mess. This is just a really quick video. It's not really anything that we haven't done before. Another conversion to 9-volt of a blaster, this time the RapidStrike. It makes quite an improvement. I'll put up, this is a little lazy, I'll put in a YouTube short, a TikTok video of what the performance difference is so you can see that. Dig out those old disappointing Nerf flywheelers, do a little mod, put a 9.6 volt battery in, and enjoy. For reference, here's the before. At 9.6 volt, I can still easily squeeze off one dart. And if I hold the trigger down, it's 1/1000. 5 darts a second. Very scientific. One thing I did want to talk about here as far as doing this mod, this is such a great one to start with if you're not comfortable with soldering. You're soldering together wires, one wire to another, which is a very easy solder. And yes, there is an XT60 connection you might need to do. You can actually buy XT60s with the connector already on there. You can get those from Out of Darts. I'll put a link below. You could even use something like a butt connector. But to connect those wires and crimp them and then heat shrink them without doing any soldering. I'm just inserting this in because I've been thinking even more lately about a no solder solution to give your blasters a little bit of a boost if you're younger or you're just not comfortable or you don't have the means to get the gear right away. If you're able to borrow some crimpers, get some butt connectors. These are not very expensive. These ones had ones for the wrong gauge. These ones are around the size that you would need for most gauge hobby wire. The standard Nerf wires may be a little smaller. I'm sure you could find some online that work with an even smaller gauge. They're not very expensive. I think this was a $1.50. So if you use a butt connector, something like this 9.6 volt pack, and then you have this, I'm gonna mangle the name, Tamiya connector. I don't know what it's called. I'll have it down in the description. This is a pretty standard type of connection for a lot of RC cars and RC things. What comes built on the pack is the female end of this. So you can buy something like this that has the other end of this plug, the male end, that's already pre-wired, and then you can use those butt connectors to connect those. And there you go. No soldering. You did it. This is something I'll probably do a tiny video on all on its own at one point, but really you can find videos on using butt connectors all on your own, on with the soldering version of the 9-volt mod. I would suggest if you're interested at all in performance boosts to your Nerf, get a soldering iron. You could start with a cheap one, but this Ryobi soldering station is pretty good. I think it was $100 or so. Not super cheap, but not crazy if you're getting into a new hobby. I just wanted to show you something that might not come through in the overhead video. This is how this fits in here. If we cut all of the stuff off of this connector, it slides right in there, and this 9.6 volt fits in there, well, it fits in there very snug. This is actually so tight, I can't seem to get it out. I wonder if I actually put in the last screws with it connected. So something I might need to do is go in with my Dremel and maybe make a little bit more room and thin out the walls of the plastic in around here. There's definitely room. Wow. Okay, so yeah, never have your batteries in that tight. That was kind of bananas. But there's a bunch of ribbing and stuff in here that I can Dremel out, and some area here. There's lots that I can Dremel to make this come out easier. I think it was actually getting caught right here. So anyway, there's other different shapes for 9.6 volt battery packs that you could get to that might fit a little better, but I mean, this would work just fine with a little bit more cleanup dremeling in here. I hope you enjoy this guide. You could potentially do this with no soldering. You're getting quite a performance boost. It makes it quite a bit more fun. This is something you could do for almost any blaster. You're just basically cutting it off at the connection points to the battery tray and soldering on a new connector that you can plug a 9.6 volt into. Or you could use one of these battery trays off Amazon. This has the wrong connector on it, but I could have put an XT60 on here. You can do the same thing. Stick that in there and you're getting almost, this is a little bit better, but you're getting almost as much with this too. And then you're not getting into other weird battery types. Can't recommend this type of modding enough, just for making an old blaster a little bit more fun off the shelf and pretty safe for anybody to use. Hope you enjoy. You guys might be getting tired of these 9-volt rewire mods, but I thought a good one to do it to would be the RapidStrike. I also wanted to see what kind of performance I get doing this, because I might try to take the RapidStrike pusher and internals and see if I can put them into this Fortnite BAR. But anyway, before I do that, I'm going to experiment with this RapidStrike, see what 9-volt does, maybe rewire it for LiPo at some point. We'll see. This will be another one of my piecemeal guides. I'm not going to show you taking every screw out. Some screws to note. You do want to take this screw out up here. You need that in order to take this barrel assembly apart once you get the outer shell on. I think there was some sort of clip or something around this blue piece onto this. It did take a little bit of wiggling. The rest of it was pretty straightforward. There's lots and lots and lots of screws, but you know, was not that hard to open. I fully believe that you guys can do it without a fast forward time lapse of me doing it. This is what I was kind of talking about with this if we take this screw out here, we can actually take this piece and flip it open. I'm going to, and I'm recording, ooh, there's a spring from my little, oh boy. There's a spring from my little end strike, you know, that thing that holds your attachments on. I'm also, I'm recording a different way. I'm recording with an arm over top, and I'm going to try to be conscious of not putting my arm in the way too much. So we're going to snip that negative off of there. That frees things up there. I'm going to use some pliers right now and try to get this spring out of here. All of my stuff is in disarray. I did a little event the other day, and boy, things are a mess now. There we go. And I just like to take all of the metal bits out of my battery areas. Something else we are going to have to do with this, I'm not going to do it right now. We're basically going to use a Dremel, and actually, do we have to use a Dremel? Maybe we can actually no, it's attached. Maybe we can unscrew it. I don't know. Whatever. We need to chop off here back so that our new battery pack, I'm going to use this 9-volt one. It will actually fit in the RapidStrike battery area. If we kind of put it on an angle, it'll fit in there just enough. I like doing these 9-volt ones first because honestly, they're just, they're kind of fun to do. And I feel like this is just such a fun project. If you're not comfortable with soldering or you're learning to solder, you only have to do, you know, a couple solder connections, and easy ones at that. I am moving this screw for a second. I'm going to take this dart gate off. I'm just going to, without hopefully cutting any wires or anything, I'm just going to use an X-Acto and try to get that out of there. There we go. Most of it's out of there. It's all out of the way. I mean, supposedly it helps guide the dart into the flywheels, but it's just an extra bit of resistance. It doesn't really help. From everything I've read, if you have strong feelings about dart gates, let me know. I'm always happy to hear what people think. We are purposefully keeping this one simple. This is a little piece of plastic that's in over here, over top of this metal piece, and that's where our positive wire is, down in here. I'm going to try to, there we go. That was easy. I'm going to try to, we have a switch here. What's that switch do? Well, I'm sure, and if you're watching, I'm sure you're sure as well, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart as to what this does. I'm going to guess that we don't need it. I mean, we really don't need any of this stuff. Most people would be saying rewire completely. I like messing around with these mod as little as I can things. So sue me. This is nothing useful, so we're just going to snip it. Snippity snip. Gone. All right, so the cool thing about this really is we just need a little bit of wire. We're going to make these maybe a little bit longer so we can get out here and easily put our battery pack in and go from there. I'm gonna move this. I have a lot of things on my work table here. If I'm being honest, I'm already kind of excited to do a complete rewire in this, but I have several RapidStrikes, so let's do a 9-volt one. I am running low on XT60 connectors. All right, so let's start with our negative. Strip back a bit of wire. Well, you know what, we'll leave that like that. So we have our negative here. That's not very long. We're going to get some, and this is just for the 9-volt stuff we're doing. This is just 22 gauge wire, I believe. We don't need a ton of it. I just want enough that it will reach well out of the battery compartment of my RapidStrike. For obvious reasons, I think. All right, so let's take these 2 wires. I like to twist wires together, usually, a little bit. Do it just like that. We don't have to worry too much. Usually it's a good habit to put heat shrink on right away. It's not as critical when you have a open wire like this. But you know what? I'm going to put it on now because it wouldn't be the first time that I attached to my XT60 connector and had forgot to do it. So I'm just going to maybe put it on and over and out of the way. All right, let's get my helping hands in here. At some point, I really should do a video on things you should have. You know, you don't need a ton of stuff, but if you're going to do electronic stuff, helping hands are really good. Obviously, you need some solder. You want to have some flux. That's way too much flux. We'll tin the tip a little bit. That is what happens when your tip gets oxidized. You want to keep that tip clean. Anyway, that's one part of our connection. Let's do this. Always make sure that you're soldering on the right half of your connection. The negative on these, it should be marked. If it's not marked, the pointier side is always negative, or should always be negative, I should say. I've definitely been thinking of getting a second pair of helping hands. A little bit of flux on that. And on there. Not a good way to do it, but it's what I did. I'm actually going to tin this first, maybe. Once that tip gets a little oxidized, it is not as effective. Wow. It's pretty good. Short little wire here, which will be a pain. We need a length like that. It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun when this stuff gets to a point where it's kind of how you, well, I mean, it's always kind of been how I relax, but it's, I don't know, it's gets to a point where it's not super stressful. You know you're going to be able to figure it out, even if you're having a little bit of trouble. I don't know, it's a lot of fun. whenever possible, try to avoid soldering over top of your plastic, because in case you have a sloppy solder like I did, you won't get it on your, you won't melt your plastic. That'll do. So that's what I did here in this barrel. No harm done though. A little flux while we wait for our tip to reheat. Let's throw that shrink on there. It's just a memory thing, honestly. It is such a nice feeling when your solder actually flows. I'm getting a little better. Not a lot better, but a little better. Bloop. And let's do what we did before. Let's get some solder on the end of this. Again, I kind of feel like I'll treat myself to a second pair of helping hands at some point. And you know what? There's a perfect example. I should have had 2 pieces of shrink on this black connection. It's a hard thing to remember to do. Well, we are at the very least going to put our shrink on the positive connection. So annoying that I did that. No one to blame but me. Just so much cleaner and nice to have shrink on all of your connections. It's funny, at the start there was a time where I kind of was pretty loosey-goosey with that, and now I really try to never skip that. That was not a super great solder. That's the trouble when your tip starts getting oxidized, you can't get enough heat at the end of it. And that's on me because this is a pretty new tip. Anyway, I think for our 9-volt test, it should be a-okay. That's not how I would suggest normally closing up your shrink. I have an order in for some 1/2-inch heat shrink, which is really good for putting over top of these, but it's not here yet. So for right now, we will just use some electrical tape. Just want to clean it up and not have anything exposed. Yeah, you know what? I like to have some over my connector as well, just to make sure. Heat shrink would be a lot better. Looks very unprofessional, but I'm not a professional. I will use a heat gun on these in a few minutes, but for right now, before I do anything else, let's see if it works. Let's get in any locks we need. Whoop. Oh, dear. All right, let's try that again. sounds very intense on 9-volt, but I also have the luxury too that I don't care if I ruin these motors. You know, they're just stock motors. The reason I mess around with all this 9-volt stuff is honestly, I just can't afford to put, you know, even cheap motors and wheels. When I'm doing a bunch of blasters for fun and experimenting, I can't put I can't put $60 of parts in every blaster. So I have a few of these 9.6 volt batteries now, and I have these other battery trays which I still think are kind of awesome for like giving a all AA option for someone. I have these as an option too, and really all this mod is costing me is some wire, and some XT connectors. I usually make anything that's 9-volt use an XT30 instead of an XT60 just to not confuse it with my LiPo stuff, but I'm low on XT30 connectors. Just in case you were wondering, because an XT30 is plenty for 9-volt stuff. I've removed the screw from here, and I actually think we're not going to have to Dremel this. I think this just comes out, which is awesome. I love not having to switch tools or do a thing. So that is great. Now we have our little plug for the end of our battery compartment all ready to go. Sweet. So before we button this all up, let's just do a little test in here. We're all plugged in, and tip that magazine up and make sure that everything's working. Everything works, and pretty good for 9-volt. I already want to do more to this blaster, but I'm going to put it back together and finish up this video with the 9-volt version, and then we will see what is next. Heat shrinked. All right, let's put in our jam door. Let's loop that there. Make sure our wires are down below here. There is that little piece. Maybe I'll put that piece back in just to keep those wires in place. I'm just realizing now I did this whole thing with the dehumidifier going, so there's going to be noise in the background of this. I'm very sorry about that. It's very humid here right now. Poop. Anyway, let's make sure before we close this up that we put in any of these little locking nubs for our end strike areas. Make sure all our springs are in place, especially that little mag release one, because that did pop out earlier, but it all looks good. That's an easy close up. I like that. Let's learn from my past mistakes and not put in every screw before we try this. Let's take our 9-volt pack. And then we have this bit. Am I right? Or am I wrong about? Oh yeah, we can fit that in. We can fit it in. I feel like, yeah, I feel like there might need to be more cutting. It is a tight fit. We can get it in, but we can't get this on. So we will have to Dremel off this front bit. It is a wonder that you guys watch anything I do. Okay, we're gonna back these screws right out. This is an annoying thing about the RapidStrike for sure. I really need to get a bunch of thumb screws because this is really irritating. 3 screws to hold a battery door on? Come on. part never needs to be perfect, but I just like to have a minimum of sharp edges sticking out for obvious reasons. That's pretty smooth. It now fits on there. Low camera angle is not very conducive to having room above a blaster for a screwdriver, something I'm going to have to probably take into consideration. But I am very pleased that this fits in. That's great. Those 9.6 volt packs are pretty standard. That's actually what the Terrascout runs on. 9.6 volt is what the Percy's runs on. It's, you know, it's not some rare and obscure voltage for sure. I think I'm probably gonna have to go back to my other overhead camera. I feel like when I go back through this footage, there's gonna be a lot of wiggle, and that might be really annoying for you guys. So hopefully for this short one, it wasn't too bad. Bit of an experiment. I'm gonna zip in the rest of these screws. I don't think you guys need to see that, and we'll go to the other camera.